drop it like it's hot. Our panel, Cenk Uygur, John Iadarola, and we have unanimous host, Maz Jobrani. Okay, Maz, great to see you again, brother.
Fists of marshmallow.
Well, that's why we like you, Maz. You know, you're 2 graham crackers away from s'mores. Okay, anyways, lots of interesting news today. Okay, so do we have news of corruption in American politics? Oh, of course. Okay, is it in the Republican and Democratic parties? Of course. But Russia not just stalled, but perhaps losing in Ukraine. What is this?
New reports, Ukraine is invading Russia.
I wouldn't go that far, but by the way, you joke, but of course Fox News will actually say that in a minute or two. But yes, the Ukrainians seems to have the Russians on the run. There is actual evidence of retreat. So that is amazing. So don't get too carried away. We'll give you the details in a second so you know the exact context. But we are going to start with Ukraine. John, take it.
We're actually starting off domestically with a bit of a scandal here, but we will be getting to Ukraine. Our whole next block is going to be about some fascinating updates on what's going on in Ukraine. But why don't we start off with this video?
Do not concede, she wrote. It takes time for the army who is gathering for his back. Thomas urged Meadows to help the president stand firm. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history. The messages don't directly reference Justice Thomas or the Supreme Court, but show how Ginny Thomas sought to guide the president's strategy to overturn the election, urging Meadows to make Trump's controversial attorney, Sidney Powell, the lead and the face. On November 24th, Meadows wrote Thomas, quote, "This is a fight of good versus evil." Thomas replied, "Thank you, needed that. This plus a conversation with my best friend just now." It is unclear who Ginny Thomas was referring to. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas often refers to his wife this way.
I love being here with my bride, Virginia, who's a gift from God and my totally best friend in the whole world.
So we've known for a long time that Virginia Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, is an issue, should be an even bigger issue for the Supreme Court Justice. She is a massive power broker on the right, raising money and providing it to different groups, different individuals. And we've all pretended for a long time that that's not supposed to be a conflict of interest. This is a pretty clear conflict of interest though. In the time after the 2020 election, the wife of Clarence Thomas spent those months leading up to the insurrection communicating directly with some of the most powerful people in the Trump administration and trying to assist President Trump, then President Trump, in his bid to effectively end our democracy, to cancel the results of the election and stay in power. And I want to give you a few more specifics about some of the things she was communicating with Mark Meadows specifically with. She sent him a message saying, Biden crime family and ballot fraud co-conspirators are being arrested and detained for ballot fraud right now and over coming days, and will be living in barges off Gitmo to face military tribunals for sedition. House and Senate guys are pathetic too. Only 4 GOP House members seen out in street rallies with grassroots. Where the heck are all those who benefited by president's coattails? Listen to Rush, Mark Steyn, Bongino. Yeah. No, but like this is the most amazing thing. We know that there are a lot of opportunists on the right. You know, Josh Hawley raising his fist as the insurrection started, and Marjorie Greene in her speeches and all that. Now, she might be a true believer too, but people like Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, they did what they did, not believing there was anything to it, but because they wanted to be a Republican, and that's kind of what you need to do. Ginny Thomas is a legitimate maniac. She believes that Dan Bongino has the answers. She believed not that Biden and his whole crew should be arrested, but that they were in the process of being arrested, that within days they would be in barges off Gitmo. She was saying this not on Fox News to convince the rubes. She was texting this to Mark Meadows. She believed every word of what she was saying. She talked about having conversations with her best friend, who has to be Clarence Thomas at this point. And there's plenty of evidence that Clarence Thomas was actually listening. And all of this, we're supposed to pretend is not a big issue.
Yeah, well, I'm of two minds on this. One might surprise you, one of my points, which is that, look, is Ginny Thomas cray-cray? Of course, she's totally and utterly crazy. No, Biden and his team were not going to be rounded up and put on a barge off of Gitmo. You have to be a literal lunatic to believe that. Is Ginny Thomas a literal lunatic? Yes, but honestly, so are a lot of Republicans. They have mental issues. They are not attached to reality. How do I know? Biden and his team are not on a barge off of Gitmo, nor did they even stand 1% chance of that happening. That's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Now, so that's my opinion on that is not surprising. It's fact-based. If you don't agree with that, you're also detached from reality, okay? They're not off of Gitmo. Nobody got rounded up into FEMA camps. You guys have never been right about a single thing. Trump didn't get reinstated. We can go on and on, right? So, but the part where I diverge from mainstream media and many others is like they're always shocked that Ginny Thomas is crazy. They're like, there's like story after story, like, oh, did you know she thinks this? Yeah, she's a lunatic, so what, right? Like, so why are they shocked? Because they're shocked that it's someone in the elites, someone that they know. They're like, a Supreme Court justice's wife is crazy? Look, newsflash, like a quarter of the country is crazy. Republicans have lost their minds. Trump lost 60 court cases in a row. Every judge, including every Trump-appointed judge, said there's not a shred of evidence that the election was stolen. Yet, at least 25% of the country believes unquestioningly that it was stolen. They are completely detached from reality, the definition of being crazy. So I'm not at all surprised that Ginny Thomas is crazy. In fact, I'm kind of annoyed that they write 20 different articles about the same thing as if it's like some shocking event, right? Get it through your thick skulls. Republicans have lost touch with reality. So Clarence Thomas, is he crazy? Come on, guys. Of course he is. Oh, but he's a Supreme Court justice. The reason why people in mainstream media are like outraged by it is because they still believe in the mythology of great men. Like, oh, people who are on the Supreme Court and our institutions are great men. No, they're not. He's an idiot. He was put on there by Republicans to be an idiot, okay? And the other day he had the audacity to do a speech about they shouldn't politicize the Supreme Court. Every single one of his decisions has been based on either politics or religion. There is no consistent judicial philosophy other than the right wing is always right, okay? He's a joke. Both him and his wife have IQ near single digits, okay? So none of that is surprising. But here we actually have a story. The story is, wait a minute, Justice Thomas is ruling on January 6 issues and about hiding evidence. He did not want Trump to turn over evidence on January 6. Well, some of that evidence is literally about his wife. No, you gotta recuse yourself. Are there no bounds to your corruption, Clarence Thomas? And the obvious answer is no, there aren't. In a sane world, he would obviously be impeached if he continued to not recuse himself on January 6 cases where his wife is deeply involved in the plot. That's so obvious. There's another really important legal wrinkle to this in a minute, but I want to let Maz jump in.
Well, basically, what we right now, the right wing is come down to you're either a religious nut job or you're an open grifter. So you're either Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, or you're DJT, Donald John Trump, or whatever his middle name is. But this Ginny Thomas falls definitely into, as you guys have been saying, a true believer. And the problem becomes when these people start to believe that there is a religious thing and that Donald Trump is the calling. Like some of the messages that you see between her and Meadows are invoking Jesus. And it's just so crazy. And it reminds me, being someone who was born in Iran, and I saw the cult of personality and how the Ayatollah Khomeini was, for a lot of people, the savior, Donald J. Trump is the Ayatollah Khomeini of Republicans. That's basically what it is. And Ginny Thomas is one of these people who falls into this. I just did a little bit of research about her. She was in a cult. She was in LifeSpring, and she got out of the cult, and then she did work to work against people, against cults. And now she's found her way back into a cult. So it's crazy, it's nuts. And the irony of this, the craziest part of it is she's not married to a senator who's Republican or a Congress member. She's married to a Supreme Court justice whose number one whole definition is that they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be neutral. We've been seeing these in the hearings this past week when Ketanji Brown Jackson has been saying, I would look at the case and make a decision. This guy's supposed to be neutral, and she's at home running this coup d'etat from the other room. It's at what? There's no point. Like, you would think she would have some level of, you know what? I'm not going to talk to you at all. Because we see it like Kellyanne Conway and George Conway, right? We know that family doesn't get along, right? But this is a Supreme Court justice. At what, doesn't he at least have a moment where he goes, listen, woman, keep your thoughts to yourself. You can't go to the rally. The only reason she left the rally is because she said it was cold. She didn't leave the rally because it was a bunch of crazy people that were about to attack she goes, it got cold, I couldn't stand that shows that she's not only crazy, she's weak. She didn't have the courage to storm the Capitol. So if I were one of the stormers, I'd be even more upset. I'd be like, really, Ginny, you left when it got cold?
Yeah.
So she's got problems all over the place, and what's crazy is we're a year and plus past it, and these people are still able to be in positions of power. The fact that, again, looking at Ginny Thomas, she originally supported Ted Cruz. That should tell you a lot. She supported Ted Cruz. To say, who supports Ted Cruz? You got to be really crazy. Yeah, so it's mind blowing that I still am holding out, but I'm losing hope more and more that the January 6th committee is going to go after some of these people and legally, like you said, either somebody like Thomas should be impeached. He shouldn't be there anymore. Cruz, Hawley, all these people that were involved need to be impeached from their positions. And here we are sitting, listening to every time more evidence comes out. We're just like, of course we knew this.
Yeah.
So what's next? What are the consequences?
Maz, I was very surprised about that thing about the cold. I didn't know that, and it worries me because with the state of climate change, our last defense against insurrections might be evaporating every year. But anyway, I would just go a little bit further. So you had said previously he should be impeached if he doesn't recuse himself. The thing is, like, even if we're forgetting all the other issues with his wife being involved with all the moving of money on the right and everything, he's already had multiple opportunities and he chose not to, as we'll get to. So back in February of last year, when the Supreme Court rejected election challenges filed by Trump and his allies, Thomas wrote in a dissent that it was baffling and inexplicable that the majority had decided against hearing the cases because he believed the Supreme Court should provide states with guidance for future elections. Okay, he's wording that in a way that sounds kind of reasonable, but what he's saying is that they should legitimize these challenges that judges have already dismissed, implying in doing so that those judges made a mistake. They should take it up. And he says that's the reason, but what if his real explanation, real rationale, is that he wants to rule in favor of the Trump administration? What about just earlier, when the court rebuffed Trump's bid to block the release of documents related to January 6th? It was an 8-1 decision. All the other Republicans, 3 justices that were put there by Trump ruled against him. But Clarence Thomas said, no, he shouldn't have to give that information. He's had 2 chances. That's not 3 strikes, but we're not playing sports. This is the Supreme Court. I think that's enough. They're not gonna do anything. They'd never take him out, even though imagine if you found out that if Ketanji Brown Jackson had been sending text messages to the leaders of BLM or something like that, how the right would say, it would be a totally different standard. But this guy has already burned through whatever chances I think it's reasonable for him to have.
Yeah, so of course the problem is there's nothing we could do, right? The Republicans are gonna block all impeachment. There's no way in the world the Republicans would impeach Clarence Thomas. 0 on top of 0%, right? It doesn't matter. He could publicly try to kill a Democrat and they wouldn't impeach him. But look, on January 6th, they literally tried to murder Democrats.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened on January 6th, let alone the Republican vice president, right? And still there's no impeachment, no nothing. And he's like, oh yeah, my wife was part of the plot. I don't care, I'm not guilty. It's absurd, it's beyond absurd. Part of the problem is that we normalize it. It is not normal. She was part of a coup attempt and her husband's on the Supreme Court ruling in her favor. It's insanity. And remember guys, it was 8-1. Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, Alito, the Handmaid's Tale lady, they all said, no, you gotta give the evidence over to the House, right? Clarence Thomas was like, no, you don't. That evidence is gonna implicate my wife. No, I'm not gonna recuse myself. He has no morals, no principles. It's just gross. And so there's one person on the Supreme Court that is clearly massively corrupt. Ron Wyden, a Democratic senator, is calling for him to resign. He's not gonna resign. Have you ever met a Republican, right? So, I mean, Wyden's not doing the wrong thing by bringing attention to it, but we just know that it's not fixable, unfortunately, in this current state. But I wanted to come back to one other really important point. Ginny Thomas wanted the Democrats to be tried by a military tribunal. That's not just nuts. That is saying, get rid of democracy. Let's go to a dictatorship, a military dictatorship led by our dear leader, Donald Trump. And my husband's on the Supreme Court and he'll sanction it. My best friend. So we have at least one clear fascist on the Supreme Court who says, military tribunals for our political opponents sounds pretty good. She talked to her best friend. So, I mean, we're getting to late stage fascism here. There's more stories about that later in the show. But as serious as that is, it is impossible not to point out how funny Maz's point was. That she's like, this is so important and existential, we're gonna lose the country. Oh, it's a little chilly. I gotta go inside.
She took off. I mean, who would have known that all it would have taken, one more jacket and the coup might have happened. One more layer of clothes. If she had thermals underneath, it might have happened. Could you imagine Ginny Thomas? Like, I got Mike Pence. It's just crazy, man.
Who are the only
Anyway,
people?
one thing I will note, going back to this whole thing of like the nut job religious types, the reason obviously they have all of their beliefs, whether it's with abortion or gay marriage or all this other stuff. I think that's why they're so passionate in their support of someone who is clearly such a unmoral human being, Donald Trump. But they feel that for whatever reason, he's their savior. And it does remind me again of these totalitarian states, whether it's Iran or other places that had that cult of personality and said, this guy, I alone can fix it. And so when they go that crazy, you're dealing with crazy. And unfortunately in that household, crazy is living with another crazy. Like she needs her own George Conway to maybe counter her points, but that's not gonna happen.
Instead we got crazy squared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think it's time to take our first break. When we come back though, we're gonna be giving you updates on what's going on in Ukraine, including some pretty surprising developments on the military front, all that and more after this.
back during the social break here. Let's go to our members first. Ian writes in, I was thinking about Maz the other day. Happy as always to see him on the power panel. We all are, brother. Dragonfire Mathemagician X wrote in, LOL, drop it like it's scalding, Jank. In the lineup for hour one, Jank, Johnny I, and Maz, I am a happy guy. Does happy dance. I don't know what the happy dance is, but I'm looking forward to learning and participating. We're here. That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's not bad. That sounds pretty good. That's a different happy dance. Also fun. Also sanctioned. Hapless Harry writes in, recuse my butt. Impeach this clown and arrest his sick wife. Tina writes in, unfortunately, Pelosi is only allowing January 6 hearings for performative and fundraising purposes. They won't even force their fellow House colleagues involved to testify. 100%. No way, Pelosi doesn't have the. Okay, I inserted that in. Okay, so guys,
they're right.
I just realized as I read Tina's comment that I've never thought that January 6th committee was actually going to take action, like arrest someone in power. It never even occurred to me, honestly. I mean, that's how jaded I am. I always thought it was for publicity and fundraising. Like I thought that was obvious. I have to remember that even like good people, including some of my friends, still watch mainstream media and read mainstream media. I think they still think that the Democrats are going to do something about January 6th.
Well, I thought
that's not gonna happen. Come on, it's amazing that they don't know that. Yeah,
I thought they wouldn't do anything, but if there was anything that was not hidden at all, that was super easy to find and really damning, they'd reveal it. But that's about it. Like they're not gonna go digging. They're not gonna force any testimony. They're not gonna force nothing. But yeah, they're doing it.
DOJ as well. I was hoping Merrick Garland. You think? I mean, because we obviously, I don't know Merrick Garland's personality, but you think, oh, they didn't even give him a chance to get a hearing to become a Supreme Court. So you would think like when he becomes. Like I can imagine like a WWE, like, oh, it's on, brother. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't at all.
No way.
It was more like, oh, thank you, brother, and okay, we'll talk to you in 4 years when I'm done here doing nothing.
Yeah. No, Maz, I always knew Merrick Garland is going to be as soft as your fist. Okay, marshmallow soft. There's no way he's ever going to do anything. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Maz with you guys. John's got a lot more news.
I do, but we're gonna launch it up with this.
Have you gathered specific intelligence that suggests that President Putin is deploying these weapons, moving them into position, or considering their use? And would the US or NATO respond with military action if he did use chemical weapons?
You know, on the first question, I can't answer that. I'm not going to give you intelligence data, number one. Number two, we would respond. We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use.
And so that's a little bit vague there, asked specifically about the use of chemical weapons, which thankfully, despite several weeks of whisperings about, we haven't seen any proof that anyone has used any chemical weapons. But he does go on to say to another reporter, it would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time. So it's a bit jumbled in terms of what he's saying. But the reason that I want to focus on this is because we try to be fair here at the Young Turks. We are incredibly critical and have been for 2 decades now of warmongering politicians, which is why we've given credit to Joe Biden and his administration thus far in helping to try to tamp down the tensions in terms of any sort of direct provocation or direct conflict with Russia. But that means we also have to be on the lookout when they start to say things that hint in that direction. So the idea that we would respond in kind to the use of chemical weapons, I have to assume he doesn't mean what he seems to be meaning, because he certainly couldn't be implying we would then use chemical weapons. But if he's even implying any sort of direct military intervention, then that is exactly the sort of disastrous red line that we've been warning against from the very beginning.
Yeah, so look, that was a Bidenism, the in-kind line. A Bidenism being a jumbled mess that's hard to tell because he's muttering and it's not quite sure, you're not quite sure what he's saying, right? So there's two possibilities. One is beyond disastrous and the other one is just awful, okay? So beyond disastrous is in kind, they use chemical weapons, we use chemical weapons. He can't possibly mean that, that's nuts, right? So I'm gonna eliminate that as a possibility because I don't think he's lost his mind, because as John pointed out, look, we've criticized him 2,000 times. I think his domestic policy is a disaster, but so far he's handled this in a way that is borderline excellent, finding a balance between crippling economic sanctions while not engaging militarily, right? So he can't possibly mean that we would respond with chemical or biological weapons. Okay, now, if he does, by the way, then overwhelming criticism, it's abhorrent and unacceptable. But the second option is not a very good one, where he seemed to be indicating military engagement. Military engagement of any sort is a massive problem that risks war with Russia. And look, Russia is now apparently losing to the Ukrainian army. So that doesn't mean it would be easy for us, but all that is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the nukes when it comes to the stability and honestly, the lives of everyone on the planet. So we cannot engage militarily. So I hope he walks that back. That's a very bad idea. I know he's trying to deter them from using chemical weapons, and I appreciate that. But on the other hand, any talk of red line when you're talking about Russia or nuclear power is insanity. It's driven by neoconservatives like Lindsey Graham, who can't wait to mine the meteor. And just before we all die of World War III, he made a couple more bucks from his defense contractor donors, right? So hell no on any red line. There's no red line here. That talk is insane, Maz.
You know, it's such a frustrating situation. First of all, I have a hard time believing out of 7 billion people in the world, the one guy we get to lead this country is this Putin. I'm talking about Putin. Is this crazy POS? There's 7 billion people out there. There could have been one guy who might have had some level of critical thinking and might have thought, okay, let me really think this thing out. But this guy's ego, like he is Trump on steroids in many ways. His ego is such an ego, and we're stuck in this situation. As you said, it's such a tough situation. Because I've talked to people who are analysts, and they've said, look, if you don't do something now, if you don't protect the skies now, if you don't get involved now, you're gonna be having the same conversation in a month, 2 months, 3 months, as he gets further and further, and who knows what he's gonna do next. What's frustrating to me is this is Rocky IV. I thought Rocky IV was over. I thought we're already in Rocky VIII. The whole Ivan Drago, I will break you. We are there now, and we don't know what to do. And we need this moment of like, we need Gorbachev, we need somebody. I don't know what's gonna happen, because as you said, Cenk, I'm totally opposed to war, but I don't know what we do. What if they do use chemical weapons? The problem has been in the past, we've appeased this guy, this nut job, over and over and over again. And he, took Crimea, Syria, you name it. There's been many times where we've appeased him. And again, I'm not a proponent of fighting with weapons, and I love the fact that you said that we're doing these economic sanctions, but I'm at a loss, and I'm at a loss as to what Biden would have to say. I agree with both of you guys. I think they've done a good job so far. I think they've done a great job of putting out a lot of their intelligence to go, we know they're gonna be doing this, and then Russia does it, and they go, there you go. So it's almost like they're telling us what's going to happen, and then it happens, and it's happening the way that they're telling us it's going to happen. The one thing I will say is somebody had a tweet out there which was great. They said it's great to see our president meeting with the leaders of NATO and not pushing them out of the way. And it reminded me of that moment when Trump pushed the guy of Montenegro, of all the places, the one guy who's like in the smallest country, is like, get out of my way. It's so nice to see a leader and his team, like it made me realize I'm so happy not to have to watch Kellyanne Conway and Kayleigh McEnany and Stephen Miller, all those. I'm so happy not to have to see those guys. We get to watch Jen Psaki talk. I just love that. So yes, I agree with you, Cenk. A little bit of mumbo jumbo, a little bit of Bidenisms, but at the same time, I'll take a Bidenism any day over a half a second of Trump pushing people out of the way for, just, oh God, I'm so happy.
Well, and look, we do have a little bit of clear Biden communication in a video in 1 sec, but you had asked about what else is being done. Well, at this meeting, Biden says he supports expelling Russia from the G20. He also talked about their continued efforts to try to keep China out of the conflict, and also says that one of the reasons he wanted to go in person to meet with the heads of NATO is to make sure that not only do they have this suite of sanctions, but that they will maintain it on for months, a year, if that's what it takes to get Putin to finally, go to the table and figure out how to end this thing. Also including figuring out how to set up a system to review violations of the sanctions and where, when, and how Russia is able to buy banned products. But that said, we're having this conversation about fears of Biden sort of violating what seems like a pretty ironclad, I'm not gonna do anything that's gonna lead to a direct shooting war with Russia. That said, some in the media don't seem to like that he's been that clear, as you'll see with this ABC reporter talking to Biden.
Sir, you've made it very clear in this conflict that you do not want to see World War III. But is it possible that in expressing that so early that you were too quick to rule out direct military intervention in this war? Could Putin have been emboldened knowing that you are not going to get involved directly in this conflict?
No and no.
Well, that was good. That was clear, at least. No and no. But I love you say that you don't want World War III, but no, but it's World War III. That's the bad one, actually. They've gotten worse. Each of the sequels, that's usually how it works. 3 is gonna be a real doozy, ABC.
Yeah. No, the media has been on the push for war has been just nuts. I mean, don't look up type of nuts. So what kind of question? I mean, John's exactly right. There is no sentence that ends rationally that starts with, you say you're against World War III, but. No, there's no but. No, I mean, you say you're against all of us dying, but on the other hand, we could mine the meteor and make $4 trillion before we all die. War is really good for ratings on television. Did you know that, President Biden, right? No, you lunatics. No, we cannot have war with Russia. And right now they appear to be losing. I mean, Putin is going out there to are the economic sanctions working? Is Biden's plan working? Guys, when Biden's plan is not working, like voting rights, $15 minimum wage, you turn into here and we tell you, it is not working. Okay, everybody telling you that it's working is lying, right? In this case, it's definitely working. Putin's speeches have devolved to, okay, maybe both our legs are broken, but I think we could still wheel around here, right? Like when he talks about the Russian economy, he's like almost crying. He's like, I know, we're completely devastated. No one has food, we're all destroyed. But hang in there, guys, hang in there, okay? So it's getting worse and worse. The sanctions are definitely working. He doesn't care about the average Russian at all, but he cares about the average Russian oligarch, and they're hurt, dog. Don't ask them if they're all right. And to that point, our one defense against chemical, biological, and maybe tactical nukes that Russia might use is that if they go that far, it is then possible that they would also lose China, and China would come to our side, and that Europe would then say, I don't care if gas is 50 cents more or $5 more. They just nuked a part of Europe. We're cutting off their oil as well, in which case Russia would have no money left. And at that point, it's a matter of time before someone makes a move or 12 moves against Putin internally, because you cannot cost people that much money without some sort of consequences internally.
You know, it's funny. It's almost like they're losing their sponsors. It's kind of like capitalism has won. Capitalism has won when you can unsponsor the country. So like I can imagine Putin doing a speech and going like, this speech brought to you by Coca-Cola, and then someone moves the Coca-Cola, they go, no, oh, Kremlin Cola, try Kremlin Cola. It's not like It's like Coca-Cola, but it's from Kremlin. This brought to you by McDonald's, McYuri's. Okay, fine, McYuri's. But my point is, these companies are pulling out. First of all, when Coca-Cola and McDonald's pulled out, my first thought was, wait a minute, we're trying to punish them. We just made them healthier. We pulled out. We should be pushing more like American junk food. We should be like, Doritos should be like stepping up their game. But here's what's interesting, because you were talking about, Jack, like what's it going to take for other countries and other places to really, really sanction them completely? Because there's companies that haven't pulled out. Like I read somewhere, and I don't know if this has happened since, but I read somewhere that Burger King franchises weren't pulling out. The Koch brothers, I read, weren't pulling out their companies. I mean, how evil do you have to be where you're like, nah, we're good. We'll keep sponsoring the war. We're the Koch brothers. So it would be great if in a world where we really could just all like just turn a switch and it's just full on sanction to the point where there's no denial. Because I keep hearing these reports of when are the Russian people going to start to see what's really happening and turn against him. And I think as body bags start coming home, as the sanctions start taking effect, we really hopefully can avoid having to escalate this war. I mean, that's the hope, that's the hope. I mean, they just found his ship. I guess there's a ship off of Italy. They're trying to figure out if it's Putin's. It's worth $750 million. And they said they started looking at the list of the people who work on it because it's never registered to him. Like any other criminal, he never registers anything in his own name. It's always in other people's names. And they were like looking at the names of the people, and it's like everyone working on the on the boat is Russian. And I was waiting for them to be like, it was like, Putin Jr. or whatever. But it's clearly his boat. So like, how many boats do we have to take away for this guy to really stop doing what he's doing? I don't know. And I really do hope that it doesn't have to lead to us having to, escalate this war into, as you said, World War III.
Yeah, two quick points off of what Ma said. One, who's that evil? Charles Koch. That's your direct answer. Koch Industries, we did a story about it earlier, very clearly saying they will not pull out of Russia because they think it's helpful to stay in Russia to put pressure on internally. Oh, shut up, you monsters, okay? There's not a dime that Charles Koch will turn away. It doesn't matter if the entire planet is in danger. I mean, he puts the entire planet in danger through his fossil fuel investments, and it's a huge part of his company anyway. He's like, I'm in the planet killing business, so this is no skin off his ass. I mean, he's like 120 years old anyway. And so yes, there are monsters like that amongst our population. But Maz's point about capitalism is a very important one. Funny enough, BlackRock's CEO said this might signal the end of globalization. If you don't know BlackRock, it's one of the largest it's one of the largest financial institutions in the country. In other words, the bankers, okay? And he's saying, well, if we all separate and we sanction Russia and they're isolated, well, then we're not a global economy anymore. Which made me think, I wonder if BlackRock has Russian money hidden, right? Because a lot of those private equity companies hide money for oligarchs all across the world. Okay, but anyway, putting that aside, that's just speculation. I think he's exactly wrong and that Maz is right. So Maz, I think you're smarter than the top banker in the world, okay? Because
thank you.
Because I think that when you cut off Russia from the rest of global capitalism, they're hurt. They're hurt so bad, they're now partly retreating away from Kyiv. That's partly a military issue, but partly they've run out of funds, they've run out of supplies, their troops are beginning to starve, their internal population is in a disastrous shape. If you get cut off from the rest of the world financially, that is potentially a massive deterrence going forward. We are not just deterred by nukes anymore, but we're deterred by the world uniting on financial sanctions. That might not be such a bad thing.
Weapons of economic mass destruction. The only thing, of course, you'd have to add to that is, especially in countries that don't have a functioning democracy and haven't for decades, there has to be considerations for, well, what if they just don't back off, and the devastation is being felt, but it's mainly being felt by regular people because Putin can fall back on the hundreds of billions of dollars he's stolen from Russia.
John, I just got to address that real quick. We've talked about it before. Sanctions with a dictator never work. He just, like Kim Jong-un, you could sanction him till the cows come home. He murders his own civilians on the regular. That doesn't affect him 1%. But when you have a country that has a more diversified and larger elite base, like South Africa and Russia, sanctions do work because the rest of the elites say, I'm tired of losing money. Sure. So they then put pressure in the form of either political pressure or at some point lead pressure on the leader, and things get resolved in that way. So it is what it is.
Okay, we got to go to our second break. We do have more to talk about though to close out the hour, so don't go anywhere.
All right, we're back. So first, let's go to member comments. Shy Coltrane 42 says, I was on the verge of tears until I saw Maz. No better person to soften the blows to so much bad news. All right,
soft hands, soft fists,
soft blows.
Thule McSchooly writes in, and Cenk, can you please remind our audience which current politician helped pave the way to put Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court? That would be Joe Biden. How's that for irony of ironies? Okay, he of course not only was tough on Anita Hill, who accused Clarence Thomas, even though Clarence Thomas is a Republican, Joe Biden's a Democrat. But most importantly, guys, don't ever forget, and this is why we told you during the primaries, Biden is very, very conservative. Mainstream media is just the marketing arm of corporate rule. They made him seem like a fluffy grandpa. Oh yeah, oh he's moderate to progressive. No, absurd. Guys, the critical part of those Clarence Thomas hearings was there were tons of corroborating witnesses to Anita Hill. Joe Biden would not allow them to testify.
Madness.
That's just insane, man. Democrats like Joe Biden have been protecting Republicans for the last 40 years. It's vomitous, and it's what's gotten us to this horrible shape that we're in. Defender Dragon says, is it too bad that we're also happy that we're not dealing with Trump in office, that we're accepting Biden when in fact we deserve much better than both? Well, of course, nobody's accepting Biden, and we definitely deserve better than both. But Biden handling Ukraine well, I think is objective. And I don't think it's because it's just vis-a-vis Trump, right? Vis-a-vis Trump, oh my God.
Oh God.
It's like the clouds parting and a Pegasus riding through, et cetera, right? But even on its own, no, the balance has been really great. And again, you can trust this because we eviscerate him on other things, including the comment I just made before. I Am Suck says the DC media is depending on their bubble to be so dense to protect them from nukes. It's a funny way of putting it as usual. On Twitch, Dave Schmidt gifted 2 subs. Not a people wrote in, making the dumpster fire of our world a little bit more bearable. Thank you, TYT. Thank you right back at you guys. Members make this possible. If you have Amazon Prime, you can be a member for free. It doesn't cost you anything, but we get Jeff Bezos' money. So you learn how to do that at tyt.com/prime. It's so simple, so quick. tyt.com/prime. Count Kane says, another problem is that Biden played softball with Thomas at his appointment, and it's not likely that he'll be inclined to do anything about him now. exactly the point we were making earlier. Smartest audience in the world. You guys already knew that. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, John, and Maz with you guys. Also, Naughty Grandma, who wrote in on Twitch, happy anniversary, TYT. I still love you after 15 months together. I didn't even like my husband after that long. Oh my God. Well,
poor naughty husband.
TYT, outclassing husbands since 2002. As we all say while being husbands. Okay. All right, John, forward.
Okay, let's talk about some exciting news. Ukraine spent basically the first week of the Russian invasion slowing the Russian advance. And then we had a couple of weeks of them settling into what became seemingly a quagmire for Russia. Their attempts to take over cities like Kyiv were going nowhere. Their massive convoy of armored vehicles simply dispersed into the woods, the portions that weren't destroyed. And now there's actually evidence that some of the territory that Russia had taken is being retaken by Ukraine, according to the UK. We'll get to that in a second, but first the specifics. The town of Makariv, west of the capital in Kyiv, is now back under Ukrainian control. They said that the state flag of Ukraine was raised over the city. It's part of the fiercely contested suburban areas around Kyiv where Russia made large early advances but then started to suffer problems. And according to the UK Ministry of Defense, Ukrainian counterattacks and Russian forces falling back on overextended supply lines has allowed Ukraine to reoccupy towns and defensive positions up to 35 kilometers east of Kyiv. And they believe that that is likely to continue at this point. And by the way, there seems to be somewhat of an admission of this changing situation on the Russian side, with the defense ministry official Sergei Rudskoy saying just earlier today that the main goal of the Russian operation is, quote, the liberation of Donbas, which admittedly is what they pretended it was going to be initially, but it is clear from what they were doing in their first few weeks that their intent was to destroy the military capability of Ukraine entirely and take over as many major cities as they can. If they're now communicating that they are focusing once again on just the eastern portion, that could be a tacit admission of increased Ukrainian abilities and resolve.
Guys, this is an amazing story. Look, when Russia stalled while doing that 40-mile line of tanks headed toward Kyiv, first of all, they were headed towards Kyiv, and they got to 12 miles outside of Kyiv, and they were in their clear intent was to circle Kyiv, the capital. They're nowhere near what the Russian minister was talking about, which is an eastern Ukraine. So there's no question he's lying about their original intent. But when they stalled, we were like, whoa. That is unexpected, right? And then, so it was unexpected by us, and it was more importantly unexpected by Putin. Putin thought that they would be able to take Kyiv and the entire country in 2 to 3 days. I don't think even Cheney believed it when he said that we would be greeted as liberators in Iraq and they would throw roses at our feet. I think he was just trolling, right? And it was so easy to get the mainstream media to go, oh yes, of course, Iraqis will love when we drop bombs on their heads. And but that was clear propaganda. In Putin's case, it appears to be Propaganda Plus, a new streaming service. So it was Propaganda Plus. He actually believed it. And so they didn't adequately prepare. So one, the Ukrainians did an unbelievable job of fighting, unbelievable job. And I mean, there's historic resistance, right? But number two, the Russians had not prepared. So now there is real evidence, not just propaganda, because the Ukrainians also do propaganda, and they're actually really, really good at marketing. They've been great at that as well as military resistance. So I look out for, it's just the Ukrainian government saying it, I'm like, grain of salt, a little salt bay on that one. I love the Ukrainians, but of course in the middle of a war, they're gonna do marketing / propaganda, right?
Yeah.
But now there's actually heat mapping showing where the conflicts are, where they're actually firing back and forth. There's other external evidence showing the Russians are in retreat. They were 12 miles outside of Kyiv, they're now 20 miles outside of Kyiv. They're going backwards. And there are reports that the Ukrainians have now surrounded. The Russians were supposed to surround the city, but Ukrainians have beat them back so much, they have now surrounded 10,000 Russian troops. Now, again, this now gets into borderline marketing, we'll call it that. So it's impossible to know in the fog of war, but at least there's talk of mass Russian surrenders of thousands of soldiers. So if that happens, so then either Russia's gonna fully retreat and say, oh yeah, we meant just to take another province in eastern Ukraine, right? As they're indicating now, or Putin's gonna lose his mind and things are gonna get worse, right? But holy cow, the Ukrainians aren't just holding down the fort. They appear to be actually winning the war against Russia. Unbelievable.
Well, they're both tough people. Like, we know Russians are tough, and we know Ukrainians are tough. I used to actually go to this boxing gym called Wild Card in Hollywood, just to exit. I never got in the actual ring to even with the headgear, this nose was not made for boxing because it's just a great target. But one time when I was in there, this is where Freddie Roach trains Manny Pacquiao. It's like a real pros come in. And one of the Klitschko's was in there training. And when he would hit the heavy bag, the whole building would shake. I watched this guy and I go, if this guy even got close, I would die. So Ukrainians are tough people, but Russians are tough too. And what we're finding out here is, with the arms that we've given them, the West has given them a lot of military aid and military support. I think that that our equipment is definitely something that's really helping here. It reminds me of when the Taliban took back Afghanistan again, and they were sitting there in American tanks and stuff, and I was like, oh no, here we go. It's, we've armed them and they're able to fight, and also it's their country, by the way. If any country's gonna learn, that was America with Vietnam. We were there for several years and didn't win anything. We left, and so similarly, anytime you try to take over a country like this. I mean, Ukraine is like a country of 40 million people. It's a big country. And what's a shame, what's heartbreaking at the end is that these guys are neighbors, and there's a lot of Russian Ukrainians, and this just shouldn't be happening, and yet it is. And it's heartbreaking, but again, in a weird, sick way, I think we all get caught up in we're okay, now I'm rooting for the Ukrainians to kill the Russians, but I'm I don't want the Russians to die either. I really would just like Vladimir Putin to disappear somehow, and maybe some open-minded leader would come in and go, all right, let's find a way to exist together. But who am I? I don't know. I'm in Vancouver where weed is legal, so maybe I'm high. I don't know.
That does sound pretty good.
Yeah,
both the legal weed and that, but
100%. So super quick, Vitaly Klitschko, by the way, is the mayor of Kyiv. So that hitting that bag is a lot like the Russian army right now. It's shaking, right? And I just want to say on the toughness, the Russian people are super tough, but when your supply lines are cut, you're gonna starve. And there's no toughness out of starvation. Yeah. So those troops, if those reports are accurate or anywhere near accurate, those Russian troops are in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and we will have to wait and see, as you said, and we have said 1,000 times during this conflict, grains of salt on literally every piece of information coming out of there. And also, devil's advocate, a retreat can mean many things. It could be a retreat. It could be that they really do think that they can accomplish more taking over fully the eastern regions and then potentially using that as a staging ground for a reinvasion. It could be that they initially sent in logistical support for a conflict that could last 1 week, and it might have been sufficient for that. So it might be that they can retreat, actually send the additional reinforcements necessary as well as additional logistical support, and then go back in. This can mean a lot of different things, so don't get too excited, but take good news when it comes, including this good news. If we could jump ahead a little bit. According to the Ukrainian government, there has been a prisoner exchange, and the guards from Snake Island, they're saying, have actually been freed, in addition to a number of Russian soldiers and Russian civilian sailors, which were transferred back to Russia. Now, initial reports had said there was a prisoner exchange of soldiers, but they couldn't confirm that they were the actual ones from that viral story. Since then, they have said it is actually the same people. I say grains of salt anyway, but it is good news that they were able to get their people back and that Russia was able to get their people back.
That is fantastic news. Those guys are heroes.
Exactly. Well, we are running very low on time, so let's jump into our last big story. An executive at a company that owns a number of different franchises of Applebee's sent an email identifying a silver lining to the fact that gas prices are so high. But unfortunately for that CEO, the email has been leaked. Thankfully by the Reddit forum Anti-Work, which we've talked about many times on the Young Turks. And in this is Wayne Pankratz, whose LinkedIn page describes him as the executive director of operations for Apple Central LLC, sent an email back on March 9th, so very recently, titled, "Why Gas Increase is Good for Hiring." And in it, he suggested that skyrocketing gas prices will, quote, increase application flow and has the potential to lower our average wage. So hey, good news. Goes on to say, most of our employee base and potential employees base live paycheck to paycheck. Any increase in gas prices cuts into their disposable income. As inflation continues to climb and gas prices continue to go up, that means more hours employees will need to work to maintain their current level of living. Now, this is not him expressing empathy. He thinks this is an opportunity. His email goes on to claim that the company is, quote, no longer competing with the government when it comes to hiring due to the end of COVID unemployment and stimulus checks, both of which expired last year, and says that, quote, benefits us as prices rise. People who are relying on unemployment money simply will have less money to spend. It will force people back into the workforce. And in particular, into a workforce that this company will now have more control over, saying, we all competed to hire out the limited applicant pool and there was a wage war. We all saw businesses hiring team members at $18 to $20 an hour. They will no longer be able to do this. Trucking is the backbone of America, and as fuel costs rise, so will the charges for shipping. If those costs cannot be passed on to the customer in terms of menu price, the only area they can cut sizable costs will be in labor. And so, since the government has abandoned everyone, despite the fact that the pandemic continues and we're still losing close to 1,000 people a day, they're gonna be desperate. And so they're gonna come and apply, and we won't have to pay them particularly well. We gotta cut money somewhere, and that's the only thing that I, a well-paid executive, can think of. So they're gonna be desperate, and we're gonna put the squeeze on them. So high inflation, high gas prices, bad for most people, but for some, it's an opportunity.
So this is what late stage capitalism looks like. You know, if you haven't heard that term, this is what it means. Where things have gotten so crazy that we've lost sight of what our economy was supposed to do, right? The advocates of out of control, unregulated capitalism was that, oh, no, it's okay because it'll lead to rising wages and a better economy, and it'll trickle down on you all over your head, and then that will lift all of your boats, etc. That's not what's happening at all. What's happening instead is executives are saying, well, hey, bad economic news is good news for us because we'll be able to further brutalize our workers. They'll be more desperate, that way we can cut their wages. Gas prices are higher so we can cut their wages. So they'll be less able to afford those gas prices. That would make them even more desperate, and they'll need us even more. And then we'll really have them. And look at the options that he considers. He's like, well, I mean, we could pass it on to the customers, or we could pass it on to the employees. Never is it discussed that maybe we could cut into our profits a smidge. It's not like Applebee's is losing money. They're still making tons and tons of not just revenue, but profit. But it never even occurs to them, hey, maybe we can cut it, not get rid of our profit, but in tough times, cut into our profit. Nope, doesn't even occur to them. They're just like, who do we punish? Because it ain't us. It ain't us executives, that's for sure. Now, to that point, you'll see, it's not just some rando executive at Applebee's. You'll see all over cable news, people saying, anchors saying, oh, to pay prices, wages are too high, it's causing inflation. Stephanie Rule said it, I can name MSNBC, forget CNN, forget Fox News, I can name you half a dozen MSNBC anchors, okay? That it's the wages that are driving up inflation. You wanna know what the reality is? Inflation is up 7%, average wages for the average American worker is up 2%, less than inflation. Now, except there is one category of workers where the wages are up more than 7%. You're gonna be shocked to find out it's bankers. And not just their salaries, their bonuses are up 20%. Show me one cable news segment where they complained about banker bonuses and how it was driving inflation. You won't find it because the people on television are the elites and they're doing marketing for other elites. And so they're lying through their teeth when they're blaming you for inflation. You know who makes a decision to raise prices? Companies do. That is a rule of physics. It's a rule of logic. It's a rule of math. There is no argument with it. Jesus doesn't raise the prices. Santa doesn't raise the prices. It is literally a corporate executive that says, oh, because of economic conditions, raise prices. He could choose to say, no, instead of making 15% profit, let's make 11% profit. But they choose not to do that. Does anyone on television tell you that? No, they tell you the opposite. It's just a more sophisticated way of lying to you. But I got to give you one last fact about those bonuses and how much Wall Street's getting. You guys have been, for the last 40 years, you've barely gotten any raises when you take inflation into account. Since 1985, banker bonuses have gone up 1,743%. If minimum wage had gone up at the same rate, would it be $15? Would it be 20? No, 20's outrageous.
It's about $23, right?
It would be $61.75. That's what minimum wage would be. It would be $61 if it had gone up at the same rate as the bankers. Did anybody on TV ever tell you that? Never, right? Isn't that curious how they leave out that piece of information? Moz.
First of all, Cenk, now you make me want to be a banker. I'm gonna go find a Wells Fargo and apply as soon as this episode's over. But secondly, who is this guy writing this email to? Like, even if you have these evil, crushing the worker ideas, is he sending it to Gordon Gekko? Who's he sending it to? This is like a greed is good speech that this guy wrote, and he's like, let me put it out there, not thinking, oh, other people are gonna put it. Sometimes these executives, I really feel like by the way, they can afford to, they should have a common sense advisor, just a common sense advisor. And the guy should go, hey, I'm thinking of typing this email where I talk about crushing the little people, and I'm thinking of sending it out to a bunch of people. Do you think it's a good idea? And the common sense guy goes, yeah, don't put it in writing. Don't put it in writing. Tell your other buddy at the golf game while you smoke a cigar, make sure he's not recording it, and move on with your life. But this executives are a-holes. Someone should take the Applebee logo and change it to a-hole B just for this. I want to see some a-hole B photoshopped logos just for this guy, and they should go with a quote of his, and they should make that should be a meme for, let's just get it going a little bit. I think that's what should happen. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm not getting a job at a bank.
Yeah, and Maz, first of all, who's he writing it to? Other executives to tell him, remember, cut everybody's wages. That's who he's writing it to. Applebee's, of course, had an official announcement saying, oh, I don't know why he wrote that. I mean, that's outrageous, and of course does not represent our company position, which to me was, I translated that to human speak, and it was, why did he write it down? Right? He shouldn't have written it down. We all knew to cut their wages, okay? So I just have a simpler online viral idea than Maz's. I like Maz's, but mine is just hashtag Applebee's sucks. Okay.
Okay.
By the way, it's food sucks too. Maz and I talked about that in an old school episode. I love chain restaurants, the food in chain restaurants, except Applebee's. How do you screw up classic American chain restaurant? They found a way. They probably cut costs on that as well. All the money goes to the executives. None of it goes to the food or the workers. All right, we are massively out of time. All right, everybody check out Maz Jobrani everywhere he is. Maz, what's a good website for people to find your stuff?
Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. It's at Maz Jobrani on TikTok. My schedule for my touring is at mazjobrani.com, and my podcast is Back to School with Maz Jobrani. I've monopolized Maz Jobrani.
It's good thinking. Good thinking. This guy's smart, okay? John, on the other hand, has monopolized every dragon on the planet. So that's also a good thing. Okay, so damage report, obviously led by Dragon Daddy over there. Check that out. All right, the return of the Vig, Emma Vigeland, when we return.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor, or concern for whose toes we might step on, or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
How in the world are you going to get the right to vote if you don't already have the right to vote? That's impossible. Reason they tell you things are impossible is because they don't want you to try. It only took 7 years for that to get an amendment to get a right to vote.
Does this result in millions upon millions of Americans losing their coverage? And we've been waiting to find out, and now we know, yes, it will cut millions.
Public education was supposed to be the way to equalize everyone regardless of their socioeconomic status. But if you come from a family that's poor, how are you going to afford grade school for your kids?
This fight is about fairness and morality. It's about the American values.
You think that black people all across the country, in every city, were all lying when they said the police abuse and the police kill us when they should? No, of course they weren't lying. Yes, it does happen. Yes, they do get targeted more.
Why are we going to put immigrants in prison for 5 years, which American taxpayers have to pay for, if we're so concerned with immigrants using up our so-called resources?
We're gonna do both. We're gonna fight Trump and we're gonna fight the establishment. It's not that hard. Yes, you can do both at the same time. Go tell them.
ShopTYT.com has new shirts like this one. And you're thinking, Cenk, what is that one? I can't see it other than the black. Yes, so I'll show it to you. If you can read this, you're not practicing social distancing. Yes! Now, you were practicing social distancing. This is over video. But overall, you get it. ShopTYT.com.
Drop it like it's my mic. All right, power panel. Jake Uger, Emma Vigeland from the Majority Report, and Jessica Burbank, new Rebel headquarters contributor. Look at this. Joined us since we last talked. How you doing, Jessica?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm nothing but rock and roll. Vig, it's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Cenk.
Yes, so Emma was on recently as well. And of course, she's never really left because she's still in the TYT Fantasy League, let's be real. Okay.
Yeah, that's what's most important. Even though last year, how did we let Ben win? That's really the thing that just grinds my gears.
Yeah, that was the first crime against humanity. Putin was the second. So anyways, all right, we got a great hour ahead for you guys, and Emma's gonna take it from here.
Yeah, let's get into it. So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has decided that she's going to back incumbents no matter if they're under FBI investigation or not. She's going to back Representative Henry Cuellar's reelection bid. Yes, he's under FBI investigation, and he also has a bunch of terrible policy positions, including being an anti-choice Democrat during this time. And he's headed to a runoff with Justice Democrat progressive Jessica Cisneros. But Pelosi said to the Texas Tribune, "I support my incumbents. I support every one of them from right to left. That is what I do." Maybe that policy should probably be a bit reconsidered when said incumbent is under FBI investigation, let alone the fact that he holds numerous odious policy positions. Cuellar, who has represented Texas's 28th district for almost 2 decades, made headlines when the FBI raided his home and campaign headquarters on January 19th. The congressman has maintained his innocence and vowed to remain in the race, but has not specified why he is under investigation. Pelosi says that she knows nothing about it. "I don't know what it is," after a reporter, this is Pelosi, after a reporter asked her about the probe. "I haven't seen anything. Have you?" Pelosi said. "Do you know what it's about?" "I don't know, I read the news, Nancy." And his home was raided by the FBI. That seems pertinent. That happened a little bit earlier this year due to his potentially shady ties to Azerbaijan and money maybe coming out of there. The raid was a part of a federal grand jury probe. Subpoenas reviewed from the probe by ABC News reportedly sought records from a number of organizations with ties to Azerbaijan, in addition to 3 Texas-based companies with ties to Cuellar's wife, Imelda. So there's a bunch of potential human rights violations there. But Janka, I wanted to see if you want to weigh in before we get into a few more of the details.
So question is Nancy Pelosi backing Cuellar because she's clueless or corrupt? As you can guess, trick question, both. So first of all, she says, "I'm proudly endorsing Cuellar." They say, "What about the FBI investigation?" She's like, "What is it?" Wait, if you know there's an FBI investigation, but you don't know what it is, why'd you endorse him? Shouldn't you at least know what it's about? You don't know that it might involve Azerbaijani oligarchs. You don't know that it's about corruption. You don't know anything about it, but you decided, I'll just endorse him anyway. Now, Republicans are making a real run at this district. This is not a heavily blue district. So the Democrats could lose it if they have, for example, a candidate up on FBI charges of corruption. And so Democratic leadership always tells us, "Oh no, we hate we don't hate the progressives. We just have to use all of our money against them instead of Republicans because they just can't win. And we need Democratic candidates that can win." Oh, Cuellar will have a massive liability in the general election and likely hand the seat to a Republican. Who cares? He's conservative like I am, Nancy Pelosi thinks, and he's corrupt like I am. So what's the issue of corruption? Well, Nancy Pelosi is a conservative Democrat because she's taken $1 billion in campaign donations. Now, there's another word for that. We used to call those bribes, but now mainstream media doing marketing for corporate rule says, no. When a corporation gives millions of dollars to Nancy Pelosi, it doesn't corrupt her, she's an angel. And it's not a bribe, it's a campaign donation. So that's why she backs conservatives like Cuellar, and of course, she's also lying when she says, "Oh no, I just back incumbents no matter what." Do you? Because I distinctly remember you endorsing Joe Kennedy against the incumbent Democrat Ed Markey in the Senate because Ed Markey's a progressive. So, and Jessica, part of the problem here is that the press enables her. So if there was somebody in the room that said, "Wait, that's not true. You backed Markey, you backed Kennedy against Markey. You didn't seem to have any ostensible support for Rashida Tlaib and AOC when they were primaried. You always rally both rhetorically and financially to the side of conservative Democrats. But no, the press says, oh, of course, yes, madam. Of course, madam. You are a master legislator, madam.
Yes, one of many of Pelosi's contradictions. I remember back to the 2020 primary when she was asked about Warren and Bernie's stances on Medicare for all. She said, I usually cast my vote for a woman, I just do. And here she is supporting a man in a race where he's running against a woman. Not only that, but the only Democrat who voted against protecting women's right to choose.
No, by the way, that's such a great point by Jessica. Cuellar has so many problems. He was already one of the most conservative. He was already one of the most corrupt in terms of campaign donations directly from corporations, et cetera, out of any member of Congress. On top of that, he's such a, that's why Pelosi sees him and think, birds of a feather flock together, right? So she's like, oh, he was also incompetent in that he took illegal bribe money? Wow, that's pretty good. I really like that guy, right? But if you put aside all of those massive issues, mountains of issues against Cuellar, he's against the right to choose in the state of Texas. So he's agreeing with the Texas Republicans as they encourage vigilantes against women who just want to have the right to control their own bodies. You got a Democrat betraying us on that issue and saying women should be chattel, and Pelosi backs him. Anyone who claims that Pelosi isn't a conservative Democrat is actively lying to you.
Right, and look at the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats here. Trump is like basically excommunicating any Republican that dared to say, okay, maybe the election wasn't stolen, or maybe we should move past it. I mean, the other day he said he rescinded his endorsement of Mo Brooks for that very reason. Like, say what you want, but Trump is trying to discipline the members of his party and making sure that they fall under his very specific line of I am the kingmaker. But Nancy Pelosi, I support incumbents for the sake of incumbents, regardless if they might lose in the general election in the seat that should be the Democrats, even though yes, it makes it more vulnerable if Cuellar is the nominee. I just support my incumbents. I support my incumbents. And that means that the party really has very little internal discipline from a policy perspective and from a messaging perspective. And also the hypocrisy of it too. Let's get into what some of the accusations against him are in terms of corruption. Because I thought that Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democratic Party were so concerned about foreign interference in elections and foreign governments controlling certain politicians, namely Trump, when it came to Russia. Perhaps they should be concerned about these donations to Cuellar. So Cuellar and his wife Imelda traveled to Azerbaijan at the cost of nearly $25,000. The trip was paid for by the Turquoise Council of Americans and Eurasians, a Texas-based nonprofit. For the next several years, Cuellar frequently collaborated with Kemal Oksus, the leader of the nonprofit. A few months later, a Cuellar staffer took an additional trip to Azerbaijan that also included US Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of Houston and 9 other members. The trip was approved by the Congressional Ethics Office, but the Washington Post later reported that the Azerbaijani government state oil company secretly funded the junket. Jackson Lee and other members who went on that trip publicly stated at the time that they were misled and that the House Ethics Committee signed off on the trip. Oksus was later charged with covering up the source of the funding. He pleaded guilty to the charges in 2018, according to the US Department of Justice. SOCAR, which is where the money for the trip was actually wired, is the largest company and source of tax revenue in Azerbaijan. The company has embarked on ambitious plans to build a network of pipelines that stretch through multiple countries to deliver gas into Europe. The so-called Southern Gas Corridor built by SOCAR in partnership with BP and other Western energy giants required an investment of over $45 billion. So Cuellar didn't personally go on this trip, but one of his staffers did and other House members did. And then pair that with the rest of the connections, you get a clearer picture. So not only is Pelosi backing a vulnerable incumbent who is under investigation, who is anti-choice, who is also has questionable ties to foreign oil and gas, which we're supposed to be the party, the Democrats are supposed to be the party that's transitioning away from oil and gas. Laughable, I know, with Joe Manchin leading the anti-climate change acceptance wing of the Democratic Party. But part of this too is the institutional corruption that Cenk was mentioning. Cuellar has been in this seat for a long time, and he and his family have connections to the local party there. So the fish rots from the head down, and Pelosi is responsible for this in many different ways.
Yeah, no, they hate progressives way more than they hate Republicans because they've been playing this game of good cop, bad cop with Republicans for a long time. Nancy Pelosi is familiar with that game and really likes that game. But progressives actually challenge their own power. So Pelosi does not like that. So she'd much rather have a corrupt Cuellar who's against women's rights than an honest Jessica Cisneros who doesn't take corporate PAC money like Nancy Pelosi does. By the way, it's not like the other Democrat in the race doesn't have a chance. They pretty much tied. They already had a primary. They pretty much tied. They were so close they have to go to a runoff. So Jessica Cisneros is just as viable at a bare minimum without an FBI investigation as Cuellar is for the general election. And obviously with the FBI investigation, that makes Cisneros far more viable. But Pelosi doesn't actually care about Democrats holding power. She just wants to make sure she holds power and progressives challenge her power within the party. And that's how this game is played. By the way, since Jessica Cisneros does not take corrupt money like Cuellar does, she needs grassroots support. Her website is jessicacisnerosforcongress.com. And we'll put the link down below, jessicacisnerosforcongress.com. It's in the description box if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook. Make sure you participate in our democracy and get out these corrupt clowns.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that Pelosi's actions are not those of the leader of a party. Even if you're not a progressive and you want Democrats to keep their majority, you've got Nancy Pelosi picking candidates that probably won't win, that have a lot of controversy surrounding their seats. The smart thing to do would be to have him politely bow out and back another candidate, but she refuses to do that.
Exactly. All right, we got to take a break. All right, when we come back, more corporate PAC corruption. And of course, enabled by the Democratic Party. We'll show you evidence when we return. Usual programming notes for you guys. Remember our newest show is Watch List, hosted by JR Jackson. That's at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. YouTube.com/watchlist_TYT is a good place to catch it. Has all the hot videos of the day, so you know exactly what the news is first thing in the morning if you're on the West Coast time. And a good lunch break viewing for those of you on the East Coast. All right, so Jordan Ewell did this crazy thing that we told you about, where he said he'd get a tattoo if folks gave $5,000 in contributions to helpyemennow.com. So because he wanted to bring attention to the people suffering in the war in Yemen and not just the war in Ukraine. We care about both deeply. The rest of the media, not so much. Anyway, Jordan's an awesome guy. And people were moved by that, so he didn't raise $5,000. So far, he's raised $13,000. So you can keep that going at helpyemennow.com. But then our folks at Shop TYT decided they were going to jump into the mix So Jordan did get the tattoo, and it's a hilarious tattoo of a thing we said about him on Old School. We called him an un-American piece of crap, except the other word, because he didn't own a pen. Does that make sense? Of course not. That's why it's on Old School, where we have nothing but fun. You should check that out if you're a member. Anyways, he did get the tattoo because he's nuts, and we love him for it. And so now shoptyt.com is selling fake tattoos and pens with that same slogan because his girlfriend got him those pens. And all the proceeds also go to help Relief and Reconstruction Foundation in Yemen. Just like all the proceeds of our merch on Ukraine go to help human rights in Ukraine. And so speaking of which, somebody just said in the comments section here, let me find it. Defender Dragon wrote in, whoop whoop, so proud to wear my Russian warship go F yourself t-shirt. We've got that up at shoptyt.com. Again, 100% of the proceeds go towards helping Ukrainians. And it turns out, as we showed you earlier in the show, the guys who said Russian warship go F yourself have now been released in this prisoner swap. So that is fantastic news. So we're trying to do our part in helping out. And I think Jordan Neal is a bit of an American hero for doing what he did. Now, Gabby Marita writes in the member section, establishment Democrats would rather lose to Republicans than allow progressives more representation within the party. Corporate Dems and the GOP are basically on the same team. Progressives have to fight both. Unfortunately true. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Jessica, and Emma with you guys. In fact, on Twitch, Mary Animal wrote in, Emma and Jessica, yes, please. Okay, so asking you shall receive. All right, Emma, take it away.
Vladimir Putin had an interesting statement about the invasion of Ukraine and the Western response as he perceives it. He brought somebody unexpected into the mix in his commentary. I'm a little sad that John isn't here to comment on this as a fellow nerd and Harry Potter lover himself. J.K. Rowling, a victim of Western cancel culture, and somehow that means that she has common cause with Vladimir Putin, I guess, according to at least him, although she refutes it later. We'll get into that. This just has to do with the fact that she has been openly transphobic, and Vladimir Putin says, she's a victim of cancel culture, just like Russia. Putin said that the Harry Potter author was canceled, quote, just because she didn't satisfy the demands of gender rights. He continued, they are now trying to cancel our country. I'm talking about the progressive discrimination of everything to do with Russia. Today, they're trying to cancel a whole 1,000-year culture, our people. They're banning Russian writers and books. Putin then compared cancel culture to Nazi persecution. We remember the footage when they were burning books. It is impossible to imagine such a thing in our country, and we are insured that we are insured against this thanks to our culture. So you can see him stealing from a lot of right-wing talking points here in the United States. I had this image of him just on his mega yacht, that $100 million yacht. He was worried about being seized. He was notoriously very isolated during COVID, just scrolling through Barry Weiss's Substack furiously, getting so riled up about cancel culture. But to me, it is interesting and a little scary here how the right wing seems to be borrowing from each other's narratives and talking points. obviously Russia is not being canceled. That's so silly. But J.K. Rowling did something questionable. The Russian government started an illegal and immoral war, an invasion in Ukraine. So they are getting criticized. And yet the number one thing that right-wingers love to do internationally is bask in their own aggrievement, their imagined aggrievement, because criticism apparently means persecution. And that's something that crosses borders. How beautiful.
Emma, you're absolutely right. This is the most right-wing thing I've ever seen. You go in, obliterate a country, you destroy people's homes and hospitals and schools, and you murder thousands of their civilians. And then when you're criticized for it, oh, now you're trying to cancel me? You're literally trying to cancel Ukraine by swallowing it up and making it part of Russia. It doesn't get any more cancel culture than that. You're trying to cancel an entire country. But oh, my feelings have been hurt. I am aggrieved. Me, poor right winger trying to murder you all. I am the real victim. So there's a really fascinating development here that now right wing has basically abandoned patriotism. And we showed you the pictures, the right wing wearing shirts saying, I'd rather be Russian than a Democrat. You see Tucker Carlson supporting Putin on a nightly basis, Steve Bannon, et cetera. We told you about this philosophy that they've adopted, Duginism, from a radical fascist Russian philosopher. Both Putin and Bannon and Tucker Carlson have praised this guy, and he believes in violence and going back to traditionalism through violence. And so there's like a global right-wing merger where they're saying, screw our own countries. We don't care about our own countries at all. We hate the libs so much that we're willing to betray anything for the right-wing cause. And yes, in our case, that means betraying democracy. And that's what they did on January 6th. And now one of the guys who did January 6th that was brought up on charges went and is hiding in Belarus. So it's an amazing readjusting of global politics at large, where nations now matter less than ideologies. And so Fox News and Putin, birds of a feather flocking together in this case. It is just amazing. That's a talking point he took straight off of Fox News. And by the way, I mean, of all the absurdities in this story, he says, oh yeah, can you believe these progressives that are for gender rights? One, what does that mean? Two, if that means we're in favor of both genders having rights or people having the right to choose their gender and then have human rights associated with that and being equal to everyone else, no matter what their gender is, yeah, guilty as charged. We believe in equality. Obviously, Vladimir Putin doesn't, and he's trying to appeal to right-wingers in America, saying, oh, you gotta lift these sanctions. You gotta make sure that America betrays itself and supports us because the Ukrainians and the West are woke.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback really quickly off what you said there, Cenk, it is the abandonment of nationalism in favor of authoritarianism, and that is widespread among the right wing at this point.
Yeah, I think the Putin mentioning J.K. Rowling, it seems ridiculous, it's hilarious and horrifying, but it's really deliberate. Like, we have to imagine what happened in this meeting where they decided, yeah, we're going to talk about Harry Potter in his speech. Like, people probably sat down, and I like, Emma, you imagining Putin arriving at this idea. I did the same thing, and I picture Putin and his cabinet just around a table, and they've got a whiteboard up, and they're like, okay, what do Americans like? And it says Harry Potter, Star Wars, cheeseburgers. They're like, what can we attack? And they're like, okay, my enemy's enemy wrote the beloved Harry Potter series, so let's leverage that. And in the same speech, we'll talk about burning books. It's like almost as if he's trying to scare people into thinking they're burning the Harry Potter books, and that folks in America will try and protect these books and side with Russia. But it's exactly that. They're trying to appeal to the right wing and splinter America's support of Ukraine's defense against Russia.
Well, he's trying to evoke the imagery from World War II and the Nazi imagery there, which is obviously creates a lot of painful memories for Russians. So this is a way for him to shore up the domestic front. They lost over 20 million people in World War II. That's why he pretends like this is a denazification project. And also it hides the ball because his government is currently arresting people who are protesting against the war. Talk about cancel culture, talk about suppression of free speech. The Russian police forces and authorities are literally stifling down on dissent in the news and in the streets of the many Russian people who we should not conflate what Putin is doing with the Russian people here, of the many Russian people who are speaking out against this. It's very difficult to do so in Russia.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great irony here when he's like, oh my God, they're burning books like the Nazis. You know who was burning books, including very literally Harry Potter? The right wing in Tennessee. We covered that story a couple of weeks ago. So the right wing are like, oh, can you believe cancel culture? Dave Rubin even wrote a book that had a title, Don't Burn This Book. And then the right wing goes and has a book burning party. We showed you, it looked exactly like the Nazi book burning, and they actually literally burned Harry Potter. And so, and look, Emma mentioned Barry Weiss, like the queen of cancel culture, meaning like complaining about cancel culture. She started her career and got famous by trying to get Palestinian professors fired for arguing for Palestinian human rights. The right wing just doesn't mind hypocrisy. So Putin is saying, now remember everybody, we're against the Nazis. That's why we want an authoritarian government that invades sovereign countries in Europe and takes away their sovereignty and then takes them as part of our glorious homeland. And then we will continue to expand until we have a 1,000-year empire. Like, right wingers look at that, whether it's in Russia or in America, and they're like, yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, if there's one thing that Putin and the American right have in common, it's cognitive dissonance. And that's why they get along so well. That's why they agree on so much. That's why we have Tucker Carlson backing up Putin on the daily. It's insane.
And we should say that despite J.K. Rowling's vicious transphobia, and I mean, honestly, again, I grew up reading these books. It's painful to look back on how, honestly, her bad politics are reflected in the books in hindsight, but they come way more to the forefront when she's essentially bought into a right-wing propaganda project that Murdoch has undergone in the UK. The way that the CRT is being currently pushed as this existential, scary threat on right-wing news stations like Fox News in the United States, they've been doing that for a long time with trans people. Men are gonna dress up as women and sexually assault other women. Just vicious stuff that someone like J.K. Rowling has bought into. And by the way, be prepared, they're starting an all-out blitz to do that here in the United States as well. But here she is, she did disavow what Putin said. Critiques of Western cancel culture are probably not best made by those currently slaughtering civilians for the crime of resistance or who jail and poison their critics, #I stand with Ukraine. So, that's something, at least in the context of Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, no, it's good to see her putting out a great statement. Even if we disagree on some things, if she comes on the right side on this, that's good. And most importantly, because it basically pushes back against Russian propaganda and makes it less effective. So Rowling now significantly better than Fox News, where they do Russian propaganda 24/7. Okay, you know what, guys? I know we got to go to break, but I just figured out why they took RT off the air. They didn't need it anymore. They just have Fox News.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay.
And some leftists cosplaying as leftists, right?
which is what they had on RT, so it's kind of perfect. All right.
Yep.
So, all right, we got to take a break. When we come back, right wingers at home attacking the same community. They're nearly proving our point perfectly. We'll cover that story when we come back. All right, back on TYT, more programming notes. Today, of course, for the members, we have a bonus episode where we have a hilarious and tragic video from Kim Jong-un celebrating his missiles. So you'll want to see that. So tyt.com/join, or if you're on YouTube, just hit the join button below. But right after that, you go to twitch.tv/tyt. And there you're gonna get Game Busters, and that's the legendary Jordan Ewell, raised all that great money for Yemen. And he's gonna kick off the weekend with Game Busters. That's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, okay? And you get to, guys get to play with him and maybe even sabotage their games. So that sounds fun. That's so funny. Now we're going to members. Dragon with a Girl Tattoo said, do you think Putin will go on Joe Rogan's show to discuss cancel culture? Not impossible, okay. And Strategic Diversity Dragon says Putin also accuses fascist government of Ukraine of being too trans friendly. GOP quality BS. That's right. And we have to denazify Ukraine. They are not pure enough from a gender and racial perspective. Irony, where art thou? Okay. Urban Herman says it is an amusing coincidence that the last time I heard Emma broadcast, she was discussing rolling on the Bituation Room. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's Francesca Fiorentina's podcast. It's now part of the TYT network, and you should definitely check that out wherever you get podcasts. It's called the Bituation Room, and it's awesome. Now on Twitch, Felicity91 wrote in, yes, Emma and Jessica, two strong journalists. Couldn't agree more. Geeky Girl gifted 10 subs. KFax the Destructor wrote in, happy belated birthday, Cenk. While I might be salty myself, I appreciate your enthusiastic optimism. The world is dark and full of peril, and I turn to two places to give me hope that things can get better if we work towards it: Lord of the Rings and TYT. So, which then naturally brings me to this comment from YouTube Super Chat. Mr. Charles wrote in, did John Adderley create the Dragon Squad and become Dragon Daddy so Cenk would drop his former title of King of the Dorks? Well, if that was the plan, it hasn't worked perfectly yet, but thank you for reminding me of that. Pitchforks Dragon said, I don't have much time for work. I don't have much time, work's busy. Just want to pop in and say, what's up, TYT fam? And we want the replay back. We had to take the replay down, but that's why God created membership, tyt.com/join. You can get the show anytime you want, or hit that join button below. We'll see you in a sec. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Emma Vigeland from Majority Report, and Jessica Burbank, who's now contributed at Rebel headquarters. You got to check out our videos there. The only problem is they're a little too good. Okay, I'm just giving you fair warning. Okay, now you know that, and we can proceed. All right, to the person who built Rebel headquarters, Emma Vigeland, take it away.
Oh. The Austin Independent School District has celebrated Pride Week for 8 years now, but not on Texas AG Ken Paxton's watch. He has written yet another strongly worded letter. A few weeks ago, he wrote a letter saying, I think directing the Texas agencies that would be responsible to look into whether or not parents who seek gender affirming care for their trans children, AKA listening to the mental health wishes and bodily wishes of their children and validating them, maybe if they should be criminally investigated or not. Yeah, he's at it again, and he wants to put a stop to Pride Week in general. The Texas legislature has made it clear when it comes to sex education, parents, not school districts, are in charge. By hosting Pride Week, your district has, at best, undertaken a week-long instructional effort in human sexuality without parental consent. Or worse, your district is cynically pushing a week-long indoctrination of your students that not only fails to obtain parental consent, but subtly cuts parents out of the loop. Either way, you are breaking state law. Then he doubled down on Twitter about this. Liberal school districts are aggressively pushing LGBTQ views on Texas kids, all behind parents' backs. This is immoral and illegal. I will work with and for parents to hold deceptive sexual propagandists and predators accountable. See my letter here. So that language is really important for people to zero in on. Sexual propagandists and predators. One, this is, we're witnessing a real coordinated blowback effort on gay rights in conjunction with trans rights, because they feel like they can loop those two together, because transgender kids, it's newer for people. They don't understand it as much, even though trans people and non-binary people and intersex people have existed throughout history. But this binary and breaking it is really harder for some people to understand. So they feel it's a very useful way to launder their bigotry against gay people. They also see an opportunity with this conservative Supreme Court, but mostly, this is a way to connect all these things together: the CRT panic, the don't say gay bill panic. Your kids are not safe outside the home. Your kids are being indoctrinated in schools to feel and think in a way that you might not necessarily approve of, and it's very, very scary. And when he says sexual propagandists and predators, just be clear, they're basically calling people who might be inclined to teach your kids about tolerance and LGBTQ issues predators. And by proxy, they mean, yeah, it's basically gay people. They're predators and they're preying on your kids. And that's a core conservative perspective that is just straight up bigotry and really, really scary. It's Christian fundamentalism, and they're trying to implement it in state houses and with and just throughout the country, including in Texas.
So yeah, we've got the don't say gay bill in Florida. We've got people trying to cancel Pride in Texas. And it's like, come on, Stonewall was 53 years ago. Why do we have to keep fighting for the same rights in the United States that we were fighting for 50, 60 years ago? The Black Lives Matter movement in parallel with the civil rights movement. And it just kind of suggests that maybe progress in the United States is not linear and has not been linear. And it more so swings like a pendulum back and forth. And right now it feels like we're in a really regressive phase.
Yeah, that's inarguable. And here are other things that are inarguable. So if you say that we shouldn't even teach the existence of gay people, you're obviously not in favor of gay people. If you call them predators, just for their simple existence, they didn't do anything wrong. They just exist as people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, etc. And they're predators to you. Well, obviously you're against them. So please, Republicans, like just admit it. It's okay, like you're admitting it here, right? And you like Ken Paxton, you're gonna vote for him. This makes you like him more. You are in the party of bigots. Just look, just own it. That's what bigotry is. Oh, you're someone that does not belong in my category, right? I'm straight, you're gay. Well, by the definition of your existence, I hate you, and I will smear you and call you a predator and something that somebody so awful that you have to guard children from. So you hate gay people, just say it. So it's like, guys, the reason why I'm telling you the most obvious thing in the world is because you'll get in a debate with Republicans and they'll be like, oh no, we don't hate gay people. No, we want them to vote for us. Yeah, I know you want them to vote for you, but you do hate them. And if you're in that LGBTQ plus community and you're voting for Republicans, are you betraying your own? 100%. You can cry about it. Oh, but taxes are more important to me, money. Peter Thiel, yeah, I'm looking at you. Dave Rubin, yes, I'm looking at you. You guys are sick and you're endangering the lives of people in your community. They're calling you a predator. They're calling you a predator, Dave Rubin, Peter Thiel. But oh, the money. There is no end to your greed. You disgust me.
Well, it's all this garbage of hate the sinner or hate the sin, but love the sinner. No, you hate the person. You hate a fundamental core identity about it. And like someone like Dave Rubin, you're right, Cenk. It's really just about the money, and they work backwards from that, and they do cartwheels trying to defend it. But I mean, I just want to make sure we get this point across, because the school district did stand up for its students despite this threatening letter by Ken Paxton. The school superintendent said, "I want all our LGBTQIA+ students to know that we are proud of them and that we will protect them against political attacks. We are going to," and then this is the district spokesperson, "We're going to react to this by doubling down on making sure our kids feel safe and celebrating Pride." So the Pride parade had already been under attack by right-wingers before. Ken Paxton just made it a little bit more high profile, but good on this school district for standing up for its kids there, because they need it more than ever. And also the teachers too need it more than ever. This is another way for the right wing to attack teachers unions. That's another way that they can make each of their attacks multi-pronged and multi-tool. But don't get it twisted, guys. This is very similar to the satanic panics of the 80s and such. It's all about indoctrination, especially when they're outside of the home, because the mothers aren't there to take care of them, and they might be subject to pedophilia and all these things. It's all about Christian fundamentalism and theocracy, and that's what they want to bring us back to.
Yeah, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom and say we're entering a regressive phase, and we definitely are in one. But in Florida, the students themselves organized a walkout. So it's one thing to see the superintendent fighting with the parents against the attorney general, but the students in a high school in Florida all walked out and protested the Don't Say Gay bill. So I think the kids are all right.
Yeah, so Ken Paxton, of course, sent out these statements because he is calculating that his Republican voters are vicious bigots, and that this will help him politically because he was hurt politically for other reasons. So he's thinking, I'm gonna rally my own voters. How am I going to rally them? They love hatred, they love bigotry, so I'm gonna give them more of that. And if you're a Republican and your feelings are hurt, I don't care. You know whose feelings are hurt more? People who were born gay and that you're calling a predator, and that you're saying should not have equal rights. And by the way, when I talk about people who betray their own communities, let's be honest. Look, so I was born Muslim, my family's Muslim, and yeah, there are Muslims who voted for Donald Trump after Donald Trump said that he wants a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. By the way, you want to talk about cancel culture? They wanted to cancel 1.6 billion people and say, just because you're Muslim, we hate you, and we don't want you in our country. And if you're a Muslim who voted for that, you're an idiot and a jackass. And yes, they're gonna come for you, you moron. And all the tax cuts in the world aren't going to save you. And so one more thing finally, if you're a Republican, and I have talked to you through the camera because I no longer have any Republican friends, I'm not interested in people who say, what, you just don't wanna be friends with me because I hate gay people? Yes, I don't want to be friends with you if you hate gay people and you're trying to take away their rights. And just own up to one last thing. You don't believe in equality. You think there should be different rights for straight people and different rights for gay people. That's a fact. It's an indisputable fact. Go home and sleep on it, that you hate the core premise of America, equality, because it is an inarguable fact.
All right, we have one more story to get to before we wrap up, so let's get to it really quickly. Insane right-wing activist and Christian fundamentalist Jaron Jackson, he's running for Oklahoma State Senate. He has in the past talked about a commie takeover of government, and here he is basically issuing a threat in a video, or I guess this is the video from before where he talks about commies, brandishing a knife. I don't think he's doing it correctly, but I don't know, you be the judge.
We are at war with communism, or I should say communism is at war with us. This war is designed to not look like a war. They're coming for our kids. They've destroyed the economy. They've hostaged the government. I'm a Bible-believing Christian. I believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is the only way to salvation. I also think it's the only way we overcome. I think it's the way that we win. I know it's the way that we win. I'm running for state senate, and on June 28th, I'd like to ask for your vote and for you to unleash me.
As he holds a knife, and that's not the only violent rhetoric that he has put out there into the world. He has talked about how the only thing stopping him from shooting somebody in the head is because doing so is a sin, essentially signaling to people listening to him that if you're not that worried about the sin part, maybe you should do so as well. He has talked about how the conservative needs to wage a quote invisible or strike back against the quote invisible commie war that Biden and other Democrats are waging and more. But he is officially running for Oklahoma State Senate. So more violent fascists in government, yay.
Okay, donations in the form of bullets, brandishing the knife. We're no longer at early stage fascism. They are now have candidates directly threatening violence. If we don't agree with you, we will murder you. Those are Republican candidates. We're not putting words in their mouth. You see the videos, you see the direct quotes, and you've seen the polls now. We've told you about that several times. Now over 40% of Republicans saying it might be time for violence. And I'll add one more thing. I mean, we used to joke around about how Ted Cruz was a Zodiac killer, right? But now, like, they've made it real. This guy looks like a serial killer. I mean, right? He's like, and he's sharpening his knife, and he's like, I'm looking forward to murdering people. I'm running for office as a Republican, right? And he says, because I'm a Christian. So to all the Christians out there, is that the Christianity you believe in? Jessica.
Yeah, I have the same question. I mean, the cognitive dissonance, even within the own religion. I mean, if you look into what the Bible says, and I'm not Christian myself, but I mean, Jesus arguably was a pacifist and maybe even a socialist too. You know, he said, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give them to the poor. He also said, you know, there will be people who revile you and want to persecute you and will utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. And so, is he truly a Christian? Does he truly know what he's fighting for and what's in the Bible? I mean, not to mention the lack of political education. Like, when I see this, I'm reminded that most people in America are equating communism with a government run by the few. And if they had real political education, I'm not saying they would be a communist, definitely not, but they would agree that this is a country that's run by corporate elites. And when I see this video, I just see someone who's hurt and angry and confused, who is probably struggling to get by and has no idea who to be mad at, and has been emboldened by the right wing demagogues who to be mad at.
Yeah, this guy's sling blade. He's like, as he's sharpening his knife. And then so when I call him low IQ, hey, idiot, don't look down, look up if you're trying to figure out who's screwing you. Yes, of course it's corporate elites that are in power, not a communist that barely exists in America, you lunatic. And then of course they'll catch feelings. Oh, Cenk, you can't call him low IQ. He just threatened to murder us. Get your priorities straight. Okay, all right, we got a post game for you guys. Speaking of murderers, Kim Jong-un has put out a hilarious and tragic missile video. We'll show that to the members, tyt.com/join to become a member, or if you're on YouTube, hit the join button below. We'll see you there in a minute.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Cenk. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything. to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, "Sir, would you like to rethink that?" What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it? I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not f***ing. Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
And now it's just the three of us.
This is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
Fair enough.
Right, Kingsley.
See, I watch movies.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com, join and free trial.
I'm old school with the old folks.
Good.
John, come back.
This is where it all began for many elected progressive leaders. The Young Turks was one of the few media outlets to cover the races of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and many, many more. We know a great majority of the country is actually progressive, and TYT is here to amplify these issues so that we can have better policies that a majority of the country actually supports. We want to drive positive change, and then we've been doing that for 20 years here. That's why we're launching Canvas 2022, a campaign to get out the vote and amplify progressive candidates, the progressive agenda, and their primary races. The midterm elections are fast approaching, and we know mainstream media won't cover progressive voices, but because the TYT audience is too strong, we can make a difference in the midterm elections to help progressives get elected and make sure our priorities are heard. Support our mission to drive positive change. Visit tyt.com/canvas2022.
Field goal here. It's time to switch to beer.
Man.
Oh, God. Do your best.
He's a little like
Oh.
No one's happy now.
Give him another try.
Oh. Wow.
This is the weirdest game.
Public opinion, your opinion, has zero effect on public policy. The richest people in the country, their opinion has a direct effect.
Leslie Byrne, a Democrat from Virginia, describes that when she went to Congress, she was told by a colleague, quote, always lean to the green. And to clarify, she went on, he was not an environmentalist.
Our government actively serves the richest and the most powerful and turns its back on everyone else.
Finally, end the corruption and get money out of politics and give us back our democracy.
Not funny, haha.